In my family, love wasn't something you said. It was something you simmered. It was slow cooked on a Sunday afternoon, a language spoken in whispers of steam and the scent of spices. And the heart of that language, the very soul of our family, was my grandmother's chili. It wasn't just food, it was a sacrament. A pot of that dark, mysterious brick-red chili could mend feuds, celebrate triumphs, and soothe the deepest heartaches. It was the centerpiece of every birthday, every holiday, every family gathering for 50 years. People would talk about it for weeks afterwards, trying to guess the secret ingredients. Was it dark beer? A hint of cinnamon? Unsweetened chocolate? It was all of those things, and more. It was a story in a bowl, and I was the only person on earth who knew how to write it. My grandmother, Elena, was a woman forged from equal parts iron and grace. She was tough, sharp, and had a laugh that could shake the dust from the rafters. And I was her boy. From the time I was old enough to stand on a stool and stir, I was her apprentice in the kitchen. While my cousins were outside playing, I was learning the sacred alchemy of her chili. I learned the importance of toasting the cumin seeds just until they smoked. I learned how to render the fat from the brisket perfectly. I learned the precise moment to add the dark, stout beer to deglaze the pot. Her recipe wasn't written down in a single place. It was a collection of faded, food-stained index cards, scribbled notes on the backs of envelopes, and a whole lot of memory. It was our secret language. My Aunt Karen, my mother's sister, never understood. To her, the kitchen was a place of labor, not love. She saw the chili as a party trick, a performance. She was always trying to get the recipe, but not with the curiosity of a student. She wanted it with the impatience of a competitor. I remember one Thanksgiving, she cornered my grandmother by the stove. "Oh, Mama," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness, "you have to give me the chili recipe. It's a family treasure. It should be shared." My grandmother, without missing a beat, just smiled and said, "Some treasures, Karen, are meant to be earned, not given." The week before she passed away, she called me to her bedside. The fire in her was fading, but her eyes were still sharp. She pressed a worn, leather-bound notebook into my hand. "I wrote it all down for you, Benny," she whispered, her voice a dry rasp. "This is our family's heart. Protect it." I held that book like it was the most precious thing in the world, because it was. At the reading of the will a week later, it was officially bequeathed to me. The lawyer read the line aloud. "To my grandson, Benjamin, I leave my personal recipe collection, a legacy of love to be carried on." I saw the look on Aunt Karen's face, a tight, bitter smile. "Well," she muttered to my mother, just loud enough for me to hear, "it's just chili after all." It was never just chili, and she was about to find that out. For a couple of years, life settled into a new, quieter rhythm. I honored my grandmother's memory the only way I knew how. I cooked. I made her chili for birthday parties, for friends who were going through a tough time, for the annual neighborhood block party. I became the keeper of the flame, and I was proud of it. Then the circus came to town. American Home Chef, the biggest, most popular cooking competition show on television, announced it was holding open auditions in our city. The grand prize was $100,000 and a potential cookbook deal. For my Aunt Karen, this wasn't an opportunity. It was a destiny. She felt she had been denied. She became a woman possessed. The fame, the celebrity chef host, Chef Antoine, the validation, she wanted it all. And she decided that my grandmother's chili was her golden ticket. The phone calls started a month before the audition. "Benny, honey, it's your Aunt Karen," she began, her voice syrupy. "I've been thinking. That TV show, it's a chance to put your grandmother's legacy on the map, to make the whole world see how special she was." I don't think Grandma would have wanted that, Aunt Karen, I said politely. Don't be silly, she snapped, the sweetness vanishing. She would have wanted the family to be famous. This is our chance. I refused. A week later, she tried a different tactic: bribery. Listen, Ben, she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Let's be business partners. You give me the recipe, I win the show, and I'll give you a 10% cut of the prize money. It's a win-win. It's not for sale, I said, my patience wearing thin. Her final call was pure guilt. Your grandmother would be so disappointed in you, Benjamin, hoarding her memory all to yourself. It's selfish, truly selfish. After that, she went silent. I thought, foolishly, that she had finally given up. A week before the audition, I came home from my job at the local library. The moment I walked into my small apartment, I felt that prickling sense that something was wrong. It was a feeling of violation. The air was different. I walked into my kitchen. The drawer where I kept the recipe book, the third one down, next to the silverware, was slightly ajar. My heart stopped. I pulled it open. The space where the leather-bound book always sat was empty. I didn't need a detective. I didn't need to dust for fingerprints. I knew, with a certainty that was as cold and hard as a block of ice in my stomach, who had done it. She had a spare key to my place for emergencies, and in her line, this was the biggest emergency of her life. She hadn't just stolen a book. She had committed a desecration. She had taken the heart of our family, the one thing my grandmother had entrusted to me, and she was going to parade it on national television for her own selfish, pathetic shot at 15 minutes of fame. The betrayal was so profound, so absolute, I felt a rage so hot it was silent. My first instinct was to call her, to scream at her, to drive to her house and demand she return what was mine. I picked up my phone, my thumb hovering over her name. But then I stopped. A memory surfaced, unbidden. It was from a few years ago, not long after my grandmother had passed. I was sitting in my kitchen, looking at the precious recipe book, and a wave of paranoia washed over me. I thought about Aunt Karen, about her jealousy. I thought about how easily a fire, a flood, or a single act of carelessness could destroy this irreplaceable piece of my grandmother. So I had decided to create a backup, a decoy. I had gone to an old bookstore and found a leather-bound journal that was nearly identical to the original. I spent a weekend brewing strong coffee and tea, staining the pages to give them a convincing, aged patina. Then, with a pen that matched my grandmother's spidery handwriting, I painstakingly transcribed every single recipe. The pot roast, the apple pie, the Sunday gravy, and of course, the chili. I copied it almost perfectly. Almost. I remembered a conversation with my grandmother years ago. She had told me, the secret to a great chili, Benny, is balance. Every ingredient has to have a purpose. One wrong move and the whole thing falls apart. And as I was writing down the list of spices in the decoy book, a mischievous, protective idea had taken root. I looked at the line that read, 2 heaping tablespoons of high-quality smoked Spanish paprika. It was a key ingredient, the one that gave the chili its deep, smoky flavor and its signature brick red color. And in the decoy book, I made one tiny, almost imperceptible change. I wrote down a different ingredient, one that had the same vibrant red color, the same fine, powdery texture, an ingredient that would, in equal measure, completely and utterly destroy the balance of the dish in the most spectacular way imaginable. I got up from my couch and walked to my bookshelf. Behind a row of old paperbacks, I pulled out the real recipe book. It was safe. It had been there the whole time. The book she stole, the one she thought was her golden ticket, was a forgery. It was a trap I had set years ago and forgotten about, a quiet act of preservation that had just become an act of war. I put my phone away. I didn't call her. I didn't text her. I did nothing. I was going to let her walk right onto that stage in front of a national audience and cook from a script that I had written. She wanted to be a star. I was about to give her the performance of a lifetime.
The day of the live televised cook-off arrived. My entire family, oblivious to the drama, was in the studio audience. My mother had called me that morning, bubbling with excitement. "You should be here, Ben. Karen is going to make the family famous. She's even wearing Grandma's old apron." The irony was so thick, I almost choked. I watched from the comfort of my own living room, a cold beer in my hand. The show was exactly as cheesy and over-the-top as I remembered. The host, Chef Antoine, was a mountain of a man, with a booming voice and a perfectly waxed mustache. Aunt Karen was in her element. She preened for the cameras, her smile a terrifying rictus of ambition. When Chef Antoine came to her station, she launched into the fabricated story she had clearly been rehearsing for weeks. "Chef, this isn't just chili. This is a sacred family recipe passed down from my dear mother, Alina. She gave it to me on her deathbed and told me to share its love with the world. And today, I am honoring her memory." I had to give her credit. It was a masterful performance. She began to cook, her movements theatrical and showy. She browned the meat, she sautéed the onions, and then came the moment I had been waiting for. She held up a small bowl of vibrant brick-red powder to the camera. "And now," she declared, "the secret ingredient. 2 heaping tablespoons of our family special Spanish paprika." I leaned closer to the screen. I watched her as she confidently dumped the entire bowl of what I knew to be pure, unadulterated, weapons-grade ghost pepper powder into the pot. She gave it a final triumphant stir and put the lid on to let it simmer. An hour later, it was time for the judging. The 3 judges, Chef Antoine, a stern-looking food critic, and a bubbly celebrity guest, sat at a long table, with their spoons at the ready. Karen presented her bowl of chili with a flourish, her face a mask of smug anticipation. The moment played out in glorious slow motion. They each took a big, eager spoonful. They raised it to their lips. I could see the initial looks of appreciation. The chili, for a fraction of a second, would have tasted amazing. And then the inferno hit. The first to break was the bubbly celebrity. Her eyes went wide. She made a small, strangled, gasping sound. Her face turned a shade of crimson that almost matched the chili. Next was the food critic. Her professional composure shattered. She dropped her spoon, which clattered loudly on the table. She lunged for her glass of water, chugging it in 3 huge, desperate gulps. And finally, Chef Antoine, the big, unflappable man. His eyes started to water. A single bead of sweat trickled down from his temple. He tried to speak, but all that came out was a dry, rasping cough. He started fanning his mouth with his hand, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated pain. The celebrity guest let out a shriek and spat her mouthful of chili back into her napkin live on national television. Aunt Karen just stared. Her smile frozen in a rictus of horror and confusion. Is something wrong? Is it too spicy?" The food critic, tears streaming down her face, managed to choke out a single raspy word. "Spicy? That's not food. That's a chemical weapon." In her panic, she did the one thing that sealed her fate. She grabbed a spoon, took a small taste of her own creation to see what was wrong. Her reaction was instantaneous and spectacular. She shrieked, dropped the spoon, and ran off the set, clutching her mouth, live on camera. The show cut to a chaotic, unscheduled commercial break. I turned off the television. The silence in my apartment was beautiful. I went into my kitchen, took out the real leather-bound recipe book, and opened it to the first page. I started chopping onions. Later that night, the family group chat exploded. Mortification, humiliation, confusion. My mother called me, weeping. "I don't understand what happened. Karen followed the recipe perfectly." No, she didn't.
Grandma's recipe called for smoked paprika, not whatever Karen used. I never told them the full truth. I didn't need to. Karen's 15 minutes of fame had become an eternity of viral infamy. She was a meme, a punchline. She wanted to put my grandmother's legacy on the map, and she did, just not in the way she had intended. That night, as the rich, warm, and perfectly balanced aroma of my grandmother's real chili filled my small apartment, I raised a bowl in a quiet toast to my grandmother, to her memory, and to the simple truth that she had taught me all those years ago. The heart of a family isn't something you can steal. It's something you have to earn. She didn't steal a recipe. She stole a cheap imitation. And in the end, that's exactly what she proved herself to be.